Long term, certainly, people are going to move away from China. But short term, I don't think it's going to be that much of an impact because it's going to be very, very difficult to put restrictions in such a short manner, especially in India right now, where there are no investments happening at all.
So thank you all for joining in today. It's such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone and our distinguished panelists who have also joined us previously for our offline leadership events as well. And thank you to our distinguished audience for joining us. It's so good to see large numbers of well-informed leaders in the EV ecosystem join us. We've received close to 500 registrations, and most of whom are CEOs and CXOs and startup founders. One of our key industries that we're strongly engaged is with the EV industry. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has accentuated its digital presence, and going forward from its flagship event on EVs for leaders in the sector, which was EVCon India, we're now hosting a webinar on how will the EV industry steer around COVID-19. One of the many modes to support the industry is through our webinar series. We're also building an expert pool to support the EV ecosystem and other ecosystems alike and be their guiding lights. And also we're supporting companies and facilitating deals between them. So I once again deeply thank our distinguished speakers, our panelists, and our leaders for joining in today. So now, in the best interest of time, I will just quickly mention the most relevant designations of the thought leaders who have joined us today. We have with us Mr. Naveen Munjal, Managing Director of Hero Electric Vehicles. We have Mr. Mahesh Babu, CEO of Mahindra Electric. We have Mr. Atul Arya, Head of Energy Systems Division, Panasonic India. Mr. Amit Gupta, co-founder and CEO of Yulu. And the moderator for the session is Mr. Pavan Choudary, author, CEO, and public intellectual. So kindly note, we will have 2 rounds of Q&As with the audience during this webinar. And now I would request Mr. Choudary to please begin the session, sir.
So welcome everybody on the panel and welcome the many participants who are watching us. There are already 70 questions, more than 70 questions I have. So I've tried to put them in various buckets, and I will try to answer generically at least most of those categories with the help of the panelists. So the first question on which I would like to have the answer from all the panelists, because we represent a wide spectrum here. We represent the 2-wheelers, the 3-wheelers, the 4-wheeler segment, the battery and the charging infrastructure segment, as well as the startup segment. So my first question is that in the COVID aftermath, how do you see the EV market scenario evolving? And I would like to begin with Naveen. How do you feel COVID would impact the overall scenario in your segment? Naveen.
Thank you, Pavan. Thank you, Siddharth, for having us all here. Hope all of you are well and safe during these unprecedented times. It's a pleasure to be here today, speaking to you all. So, Pavan, to answer that, actually, the way that we are looking at it and have been for the past number of weeks is in a very positive manner. Various factors why I think that EV is actually going to take off post-COVID. One of the most important factors is our atmosphere and our air itself. I mean, if you look at it, just a month of lockdown has produced, at least in NCR and amongst other cities in the country as well, one of the cleanest cities in the country, the cleanest that we've ever seen, the air. The skies are the brightest that we've ever seen. The stars are sparkling all across the night sky. So it's been, from a pollution standpoint, there's a huge difference which has come down. I don't ever remember seeing these kind of AQI readings ever in my history, ever in my life, in a place like Delhi, which has come down. So one is going to be the pollution levels and the climate change itself. The second very important factor, see, when we look at it, if we consider this a pandemic, or if you consider this as a recession of some kind, every time you come out of a recession, it's the bottom end of the vehicles, the entry level vehicles, which take off fastest. And that's possibly what's going to happen here as well. And the next factor, which makes me to believe that electric mobility will take off in a big way, is if you look at public transport. People still, even if we open in no matter which manner, whether we open it in a staged manner or staggered manner, wherever, our public transport is just not going to be able to handle the volume of people that we have. And if you look at it from a perspective of social distancing, public transport will have to be cut down dramatically. So we are looking at anything from 1/10 of what was being handled earlier, and could be even beyond that, to maintain social distancing of any kind in any public transport. So people will start looking towards personal vehicles more and more. Now, when they look at personal vehicles, there are going to be a number of factors which they're going to look at. One of them is going to be your initial purchase price, which should not be too high. Second is going to be your cost of running, which should actually be lower than what a general vehicle is, and should be as close to possible as what was for public transport for them. And that is where electric comes into play. And the third is going to be the factor of ease of use and convenience. So if you look at it in a way, you've got portable batteries, you are living in a block of apartments, you take your battery up, you charge it in your apartment, come down, plug it back in the vehicle, go straight to work, if required, charge the vehicle there, and you come back home. You're not going to a petrol station, you're not going into a underground metro station, you're not going into public transport of any kind. So ease of use is going to be a very, very important factor. And this is something that is going to remain. And I think going forward, long-term, habits are going to change for people.
So you're saying that man's desire to commute will remain, and if there is a recession, as the market develops, it will start. The spearhead will be the low-cost product. What about you mentioned the batteries? They should be light and rechargeable, but lead acid batteries, as you know, are heavy and difficult to transport for charging. So you're talking about lithium ion batteries. Don't you think the supply chain of these batteries may be interrupted, or the very fact that we are only dependent on 1 or 2 countries for lithium ion might become a bottleneck?
Not really. See, if you look at it in a way, I'm totally talking about lithium ion batteries and not at all about lead acid batteries. Even though what's happened is we've got an online promotion going on right now, and a large number of inquiries that we're getting are actually for the lower end of the vehicles, which are lead acid batteries. Because money is going to become more dear. I mean, let's face it. Then that's going to be across the board. That's going to be, doesn't matter what economic strata of the society you are, everybody is going to be affected by this. And people who are commuting are going to look at immediate cost rather than a long-term cost. So batteries is going to be an important factor. Now, supply chains to some extent will be hit, but at the same time, if you look at our importation, so basically the question, if I understand, is that are we going to still continue to rely on imported componentry for some of these parts? Yes, we are, because we just don't have that infrastructure to be able to cater to that segment at this point of time. Long term, certainly localization is possible, and we will move in that direction. But even then, you're going to have to rely on some other country to provide you the material for, even if it's the batteries or the motors for that matter. Even if it's motors, you still have to rely on a country like China for the rare earth magnets, etc. So I don't think those supply chains, no matter what we say, I don't think those are going to be disrupted to that extent right now. So if you look at it on a global scale, directly or indirectly, the auto component sector relies about 80% on China in some shape or form. How do you suddenly disrupt that? And how does it completely change in a short period of time? It's just not going to be possible. And right now, with the lockdown, when we are getting out of economic issue, not just a health, but an economic problem as well. And when we're getting out of it, are we really going to be making heavy duty investments in all supply chains and components and auto components, etc., for a market which is still small at this point? I mean, that's a tough commercial decision to take.
I fully agree with you. That's a very valid point. Globalization will not just vanish. Maybe it becomes a thin crust over the big attempts to localize, but it will remain a thin crust. And even if multinational collaborations are not there, there will be blocks of countries which will flock together. And I feel we should make sure that in our flock of countries who we flock together, there should be countries like China, etc., so that the supply chains don't get disrupted. Coming to you, Mahesh, what is your view? Are you also as optimistic as Naveen about your segments of three-wheelers or four-wheelers, or you'd like to differ with him?
Thanks, Pavan. Firstly, I would like to uh, wish the participants a healthy and safe life. I think we are in a very unprecedented, what I would say, era of human mankind. Hope everyone is safe. And coming back to Pavan, your question, I think I mostly agree with what Naveen is saying. I think the disruption happened in business this time. It's not one particular sector, or is it not one particular segment. It's about what I would say the stoppage of complete business activities to protect the life of the people. So when it resumes, my gut feeling is people would be more reflective, thought-provoking, looking at nature, looking at what has happened in this period, like what the other panelists have said about the environment. And hence, there is, I don't see any negative impact on electric vehicle. If at all something, it's going to be a positive thought process from customers and embracing electric mobility. So having said that, I think if you look at three-wheeler segment is like a lifeline. And in fact, when they come back, they are going to look at more economically viable options of earning more. I think livelihood is very important. And if you look at electric three-wheelers today, like Mahindra Trio, you will be able to earn per month about 2,000 to 4,000 rupees more than a regular, let's say, regular fossil fuel autos. So when the people come back, they want to be very, very specific. And I believe that three-wheeler segment is going to have, in fact, a renewed interest in our drivers who are going to embrace, because they are going to earn more, and livelihood is very important. On the four-wheeler segment, I think what India is embracing is on the mass mobility electric at the low-end segment, which is the need of the hour, which is like your fleet applications for employee commute, for self-drivers, for car sharing, and so on and so forth. These areas today are the need of the hour for taking care of the mobility needs at the urban cities like India. So this is not going to go away, but it has to be redefined. Whether it is three-wheeler or four-wheeler, the life is not going to be the same when we come back. If we assume that it's going to be the business as usual, probably we are doing a mistake. The business model will go for a change. The product will go for a change. And the usage pattern is going to go for a change. I think as industry, we need to understand the new usage pattern, new behavior of customers, and new need for the customers, and quickly adapt our vehicles to make sure to serve that segment. So, and I believe that if we do that, then we have a very high chance to get back in a very, I would say, impactful way in the market. And if we do that, I think we have a very good market going ahead in the coming year.
One of the threads which is running under both what you and Naveen have said is that the lower end of the market will revive faster. And this we saw after the Black Death also in Europe. There were certain industries which were hit. One of the industries was lead industry, which was used in making utensils, which were glazed and which were for the little higher end. And emblematically, I was just recalling that even the heights of the sandals, the heels of the sandals, there was a restriction beyond which you could not keep that height. That was emblematically applicable to the entire society, that let us revive the lower ends and let us concentrate on non-conspicuous kind of consumption. So that thread is coming through. I would like to bring a contrarian view now. And let me ask Amit to step in. Amit, what do you think from the startup side? The electric vehicle segment is flooded with startups, and yours is of course a startup which has already distinguished itself through its success. But overall, what do you feel about the startups in the EV sector? and start by please telling what your company does so that people catch the context of your comment.
Sure. So, guys, thanks once again, Siddharth. Pleasure to be here. So, my company Yulu, we are trying to provide two-wheelers which are powered by electric energy for short distances in big cities of India. An idea is that you pick up our vehicles which are distributed across the city from one point and then go to your destination. Closer to destination, there's another Yulu zone, as we say. You put it there and then you move on to your final destination. And we have been able to build this service in right now 5 cities of India. And we started from bicycles, but Indian climate and other ecosystem challenges, we found EV to be much better option going forward. So what happened to us particularly, so we basically bet on EV big time. Not only we had this mission of solving for traffic congestion, but also we were worried about the air quality. And EV seems to be a solution. But the reason why it is making sense for us and also for the consumer because of the cost and the financial goodness which we are able to get because of EV. So right now, our outlook is very, very bullish, as both Mahesh as well as Naveen mentioned, that in general, people have a little bit more softer side for looking at the sustainability argument much more deeply than they used to in the past. Second thing is, because of social distancing norm, public transportation will be off, people will not be using metro and buses, etc. And in that regard, services like Yulu, where our vehicles are only for one person, does not require any shared helmet. So we actually are the safest way after your own vehicle. And we believe that once the lockdowns are getting over, certainly there will be people who can afford their own personal vehicle, they will go buy. But if we look at historical pattern in India, only 20% people have any sort of vehicle in our country. So this phenomena is not going to change overnight. In fact, I would make an argument that because of everyone's hands being tight, they will have a little bit more double thinking around owning an asset. And in that environment, services like Yulu, where we are providing you mobility as a service, and also a safe vehicle which is not being just created the way you are not touching anyone, you're not sharing anything, but also we are doubling down on sanitizing the bikes multiple times per day. So we are giving you a safe product for you to move around. So we are also expecting, very fast V-shaped recovery the moment our cities are back to action.
Okay. So there is no contrarian views yet. And what would you think, Atul? What is your view? Where is your industry of batteries and charging infrastructure going?
So I saw that you were making an attempt to get a contrarian view, but I think you are unlucky this time as well.
Yeah.
No, I think everybody said this, and I kind of agree with everyone, Naveen, Mahesh, and Amit, that obviously electric mobility, like I also think, is still very small segment. So if at all, it's going to be difficult to some extent, but it would still be growing. In that sense, it's not something which is traditional industry which is there and it is going to go down. Reasons have been elaborated by everyone. I think you also wanted to understand about batteries and charging infrastructure. Batteries will definitely follow the same trajectory as the electric vehicle adoption, whether it is fleet or personal ownership. The number of vehicles would determine what is the number of batteries which are bought and sold in this country. Other thing which I believe will impact the overall charging infrastructure and the battery, especially because there have been also discussions about swapping or carrying batteries to chargers, etc. It brings in another element of hygiene. Even if you were to go and get your vehicle charged at a public charging infrastructure, right? Now you are handling a charger which has been used by multiple people. So there would be perhaps some amount of, I would say, reluctance or hesitation, as it would be with any public service. So whether it is a public transportation or a public charging, the amount of hesitation and reluctance would come into picture. Therefore, I see, and as a broad trend, I see people would go in for personal vehicles to a large extent as much as possible. And with that, it would also go with personal charging infrastructure, personal ownership of batteries per se. But the kind of models which Amit and company and similar companies are trying to do, I think they would have a very, very higher amount of hygienic kind of demands put on their infrastructure and asset, that they would need to not just sanitize their bikes, but also the chargers and batteries and whatnot, wherever individuals come in contact. So I guess on the broad level, this is what it means.
So there are some more questions coming because I want to spark a debate. So let me back the ones which will counter some of the narratives here. So one of it is that the fuel cost is going to go down, and which will give the ICE vehicle a bigger advantage if part of that rebate is passed on to the consumer. The other is that if electric vehicles are really on an upswing, then why is it that China is right now reintroduced subsidies in the EV segment, if that segment was automatically growing quite fast? Naveen.
Okay. So to answer your second question first, which is why China is reintroducing subsidy. See, what's happened is immediately post-COVID or post-lockdowns in China, the market has exploded for personal mobility. And there, since as they were buying more expensive cars than we are in India, the market is much, much bigger for cars than it is in India. People started swamping towards the IC engine cars. Now, we already know this for a fact that, if you're looking at equal performance between an IC and an electric, at the same performance level, electric will always be more expensive to purchase, the initial purchase. And running cost may be lower, but the initial purchase price is going to be much higher than that of a IC engine vehicle. So if you're getting out of a recessionary time or a COVID kind of a period time, then people are already swamping towards getting small cars and small mobility vehicles. And if there is no subsidy or if there is no push given by the government towards electric, the chances are they could steer towards IC engine, which is bringing China back into the same problem again, which is reliant on oil, pollution which they've been able to control to a great deal in the past decade of using electric. So that is the reason why they are pushing the customers to switch towards electric rather than towards IC. And that is why reintroduction of subsidies have come into play. That's the second question. And sorry, the first one was?
The first one was that if the oil costs come down a lot.
Right. See, oil price, even with the price of oil coming down the way it is right now, it's not going to be the same impact in the fuel price that we buy here. Now, there are going to be multiple reasons for that. The way this whole oil pricing is done is a very complex web of futures and demand and supply projections, etc. Right now, it's down to where it is simply because the oil wells have to keep on producing the oil, but there is no demand for it at a global level. But are we going to bounce back in some shape or form? Is mobility going to start in some shape or form? Absolutely. The lockdown may extend for another 15 days or 20 days or a month or 2 months or whatever it is. But eventually the world will, in some extent, start moving again. Is aviation again going to start moving? Absolutely. Are the ships going to start moving? Everything. So this can only be a temporary phenomenon of a lockdown. We will eventually start to move again, and which means automotives and vehicles will start to move. Consumption is going to come back up. And as the channels which are choked right now, they get cleared up, oil will start to flow back into the thing and the prices will begin to rise again. And that is a time when we may see some kind of a price drop or something. But what may happen is that because in countries like India, we may not see that drop simply because that's going to go into the creating of the reserve, which is going to go towards fighting such issues or such problems or pandemics that we've got now. So I don't think it's going to be that big an impact. And also, moreover, what's happening is it's not only a oil price or it's not only the cost of running, which is a issue here. This was a problem which we had in 2010-11 when the oil price had dropped. But now, when we look at our consumers, they're far more accepting of electric vehicles. They are far better educated on electric mobility, and these people are already using a large number of them. So they already know the benefits of electric, and it goes beyond just the cost of running the vehicle. It's also the ease of running. It's the environment. It's the convenience of charging your vehicle at home and not going to a gas station. It's a service cost, etc. So there are numerous factors beyond only the fuel price, which are advantages towards electric mobility. So I don't think it's going to have such a big impact this time around.
Regarding the finite resource of lithium and the lithium reserves getting exhausted, what is your view, Mahesh?
Yeah, Pavan, I think your question is same towards whether do we have enough lithium if the world of vehicles become electric. I think to answer that, I think lithium is only a small portion in the lithium-ion battery. While it is called lithium-ion, it doesn't consume the whole pack of lithium in it. It has some very small percentage. There was a calculation done by our team. Even if all the vehicles sold today in the world are becoming electric, it will take 5 to 6 years to consume all the lithium reserves available in the world. And lithium is recyclable, so we can actually take more than 70-80% back. Maybe Atul and team can tell better. So it's not a one which is consuming. So when the battery life is done, you will be able to recycle and take back lithium and use it. And if you are not going to use it, the mobile phones are going to anyhow use it. So it's better to put it on the vehicle and bring the mobility more sustainable than using it only on other storage devices. Having said that, I think technology will evolve. Today it is lithium ion. Maybe 4 or 5 years it will go, because a lot of investments have gone in manufacturing of lithium ion. But it's not going to be the same. Some technology will take over. I think energy storage devices is it's a technology by itself. We are talking about solid state batteries. We are talking about graphenos. There are many technologies, maybe my colleagues can say, which will take over. The only thing, the assumption which is folly, is thinking that something will not be available and hence we should not go to electric vehicle. I would say is not the right thing to do. Technology will evolve, energy storage system will go new innovations and learn better. And nature will find its way to make sure that the energy system development continues and nothing to worry about, according to me.
Your argument reminds me of a study which clearly told that whatever mineral reserves we estimate actually are much more than what we estimate, because we look at the economically mineable mineral. For example, the mineral reserves of copper, which were estimated in 1950, was only 100 million tons. But so far, we have mined more than 336 million tons since then, because we moved from mining of copper sulfide to copper oxide. The technology changed. And similarly, cryolite, which is an extinct mineral now, which was used in the manufacture of aluminium, and it is no longer available. But aluminium continues to be produced because they found other alternatives and other substitutes. Coming to another question, interoperability of charging stations. And this is for you, Atul. Well, the question is that given the deglobalization happening now, is it possible that there may be no one standard way or socket, if you call, for charging, as has been imagined by some visionary electric vehicle charging associations? So do you feel that we might get into more and more different types of charging infrastructures, and within the country also there may be very little interoperability, or you feel there is a way out and you're already working on something like that?
I have probably do not know the exact answer, but I can try and answer this with whatever little I know, and I can draw some parallels with other electrical standards which are there. So, first of all, there is no single global standard for anything which is to do with electricity or electricals. You know, you have UL standards, you have IEC standards, right? In some ways, they are similar, but they are still different standards coming from various, I would say, lobby groups, various geopolitical groups, or geographical flux, as you were mentioning previously. So there are various reasons to it. Including people use different frequencies for electricity, which is used domestically in different geographies. The way we drive our vehicles on the left hand side or the right hand side. So they would continue to be, even in the globalized or non-globalized world, there would be multiple standards. So there is no question about it. Now, what would emerge, in my opinion, is that there would be still a lot of collaboration amongst the countries. It's not that globalization is just going to vanish completely. No. What would happen perhaps is that people will still exchange, people will still discuss with each other, come out with.
Can you speak up a little, Atul?
India hasn't yet decided, for example, what kind of standards it wants to adopt, whether it is CHAdeMO or CCS or GBYT, and there are various standards which have been discussed, and we are still trying to make something called Bharat standard for charging. So it's a long process, which is taking even longer, and perhaps it would take much longer now because of this pandemic thing has happened. It has slowed down the things, though in my opinion we should have taken this as an opportunity of things slowing down, but standardization is not something which should have stopped. But at the moment it seems that it has also slowed down for what reasons I don't understand, and we should have really worked in that direction as a country and built a solid foundation for whatever standards we want to adopt. There is no single right and wrong answer. What we need to take in this kind of situations is take a decision and move forward with it, so that whole of industry, whole of consumer, everybody is clear that this is what is going to be followed, and we should have pushed with that.
Another question is, how will the empire strike back? Empire means the ICE vehicles. How will they strike back? And do you not feel that the government may not give electric vehicles the push that they desire, because in the post-COVID scenario, it will be very important to maintain livelihoods of workers, and any job losses because of destabilizing any existing high manpower intensity industry like automobiles, ICE vehicles would be very difficult. Naveen, how will the empire strike back, and will the government help you or not?
See, the government, of course, is concerned about job losses. That's a big concern that the government has. At the same time, they have to walk a very fine line. There is a number of things that they have to do, which they owe to the end consumers or to the general public as such. One of it is a clean environment, and that is, so we have to start moving in that direction. See, electric coming in is not going to necessarily mean that automobiles are going to be off the roads. There is going to be a transition which happens. And that transition will take a little bit of time to happen. So we're not talking about all automobiles converting within a year or even 2 years or even maybe even slightly longer than that. But at the same time, if we don't have a goal, if we don't know where we want to go with electric mobility or clean mobility, forget electric. Electric is an answer at this point of time. Going forward, it may be hydrogen fuel cell, it could be something else. Clean mobility is the answer. So if we don't know where we want to go with clean mobility, it's going to be very difficult. There will be multiple paths of getting to that end goal, but that end goal should be very clear, that in the next 5 years or 7 years, I want to be in a clean mobility situation. Now, what will happen, if you look at in the last 20 years, or if you look at even beyond that, modernization in India has happened. We've gone from the landline telephones to the mobile phones. We've gone from satellite. We've gone from cable TV, from Doordarshan to cable TV to satellite TV. There has been a transition. Industries have changed. But has the overall job market in India gone down in the past so many years? Reskilling has happened. So even when we've gone from taxis to shared mobility, it doesn't mean that the taxi drivers have suddenly got jobless now. They've repositioned themselves. They've learned how to use smartphones and they've learned how to use these apps and be able to handle customers. So what is required in this actually is one, a clear-cut goal to say that this is where we want to be. And the second thing that is required then is reskilling. And that reskilling will happen naturally as we start transitioning towards electric. Even for electric, everything has to be done in India. The batteries have to eventually be manufactured. The motors have to be manufactured. The mechanicals don't change. The chassis and all don't change. It's only the engine components which are going to change from there, from the IC engine to electric. And that is a much smaller part of the whole pie. Everything else is going to remain. Everything else is going to be required. And on top of that, there is going to be job creation for the telematics to be done, for the data conversions, etc. So data handling will become a lot better. Accidents on the roads will reduce. Autonomous driving will come into play. So I see no reason and I see no negatives in moving in this direction. We have to.
I fully agree with you. The next question is for Atul again. Atul, you'll need to speak up a little. There's a request that they are having some difficulty in hearing you. This is regarding the charging station network, Atul. One participant is asking, when will the charging station network resemble in its density the petrol station network?
I think maybe never, and I'll give you some reasons, and I hope this time I'm audible because I'm trying to be a little louder than I was. So I think there are two different things as when we compare charging infrastructure with the fueling infrastructure of the conventional fossil fuels like petrol and diesel. Petrol and diesel is a commodity which you cannot store at your home, in your office, in any other building. You need a safety precaution to be taken. So there is a separate installation which is called fueling station, petrol pump as we call in India, and you need to go there and get it filled, and that's where the dispensation and everything happens. Electricity is not that kind of a commodity. It is available pretty much everywhere, right? So as far as personal mobility is concerned, so whether it is my personal car, whether it is my personal two-wheeler or a personal bike or a cycle, I can jolly well charge it at my home, at my office. It can be charged in the basement of a mall or a public parking space, everywhere. Electricity is everywhere. So, and the reason why I'm saying this is that, of course, electricity is available everywhere. And no matter how fast charging we talk about, the current generation of batteries and the current generation of chargers still have a limitation. So you can't really quick dispense electricity the way you can dispense quickly this petrol. You in a minute, in a couple of minutes, you can fill up a scooter tank. In less than 5 minutes, you can fill up a large car's tank. In 15-20 minutes, you can actually fill up a bus or a truck, right? And now imagine a scenario that everybody went to a petrol station to get their cars charged at a very, very fast rate. Also today, you need 1 hour to 2 hours kind of scenario. Now you don't have that kind of a space. So both the problems are addressed in your other spaces, parking spaces, the examples which I gave, whether it is your home, apartments, whether it is your office buildings, whether it is malls, public parking, schools, everywhere, electricity is available. So this probably will never resemble from the design perspective. Having said that, there would be still public chargers, perhaps in the similar shape as petrol stations for the vehicles which probably ply on highways, for example. Right, so you need probably some places where you can take a break and recharge your vehicle. You give ample time for your vehicle to be charged, 40 minutes, 1 hour, etc. Kind of top up, or they could also be a spot where one could really go and swap the batteries, if at all swapping. I'm not getting into the debate whether charging versus swapping, but if at all swapping happens, then these could be places where one could go and really go and swap the battery. So in my opinion, perhaps never we will have that kind of a thing, and it would depend on the density of vehicles. The charging infrastructure will continue to develop.
Correct. And just to complement what you have said, when the light bulb came, in the beginning, it was just dismissed as an invention, because people said that how will the electricity reach from a electricity generating station to the streets and then into the home? It is just impossible. Even when the automobile, the fuel-based automobile won, that time also fuel was only available at chemist shops and small quarters, or 150 ml, 200 ml fuel was available. So you had to go to several chemist shop to buy that much of fuel to fill your fuel tank. It was not imagined in either case that the superiority and the attractiveness of the product will make the entire infrastructure happen. In the electricity bulb case, it was Edison Electric, which is now GE, which provided the infrastructure on its own because the government would not help. So in times to come, that infrastructure can come, but you are absolutely right, Atul, that it will have a different complexion, different density, given the fact that petrol is very different as a fuel from electricity. Coming to the several very good questions here, and just to bring in some spice into the chat, may I ask you, Mahesh, somebody's asking, especially to you, that why did Mahindra, Evey, Mahindra and Reva did not succeed so far?
See, it's a very good question. Many of them are legitimately asking this, but I want to give a perspective. What was Reva? Reva was the first car made, E2O was made by Mahindra and Reva, and we tried this as a concept. We were successful. Many personal vehicle buyers, even in Bangalore, today love it. But it didn't go for a large market. So the proof of the concept was very well understood. Today we have about 220 million electric kilometer, and most of them are from E2Os and many of them from E-Veritos. Now, E-Verito, if you look at Mahindra, never has been a leader in cars. We have always, our DNA has been an SUV. While electric is perfectly fitting into a sedan, we didn't have a sedan. So the only sedan we had was a Verito. Having said that, we electrified the Verito, and today I would say that electric Veritos are more than 3,000 in number with customers, and they are very happy. Today, even now, we recently won a EESL tender for electric Verito, and if you go and ask most of the fleet customers who are the product intended for, they are very happy with the vehicle because they are able to get enough customer space. The range of the vehicle is good, and it meets the business requirement of charging and using it for fleet into the application. Now, people are comparing that with personal vehicle and then personal electric mobility vehicles, and then say that it didn't work. So the intention of Mahindra was to be in fleet segment, and I would say in that segment we are the market leaders. We have more vehicles than any competitors in that segment today. Having said that, are we going to come with personal vehicle? Of course we are going to come with personal vehicles. We have been always saying between 2021 and 2022 is the period in which personal vehicles will see a flipping point into electric mobility, and we have already announced XUV 300 will be electrified, and that product will be in the range of 375 to close to 400 kilometer range. Such vehicles will be available. So it's a business and matter of choice. Do you want to launch everything at the today, or do you want to make technology which is addressing the need of the society? For example, we gave priority for an electric three-wheeler first, before the personal segment, because we feel that will change the life of the people. When we went to go and meet customers of Trio three-wheeler, they are so beyond. You can see a lot of women drivers coming and driving it because it's drive-by-wire. It doesn't have gears. So many women drivers are coming and driving Trio electric vehicle, and each of them are taking about 3,000 to 5,000 rupees a month extra, even after paying a higher EMI, because the operating cost is low. 3,000 to 5,000 rupees is nothing but one, let's say, girl child education or one child education in India. That gives me tremendous satisfaction when you create products like this, which addresses the societal needs. Do we have technology to meet such a vehicle? Of course, we have technology. Before even we launch a high range vehicle in India, our technology made in India is going to be supplied from here to our partner in Korea, Sangyeong, with such technologies from starting this year. So we have technology which can address global needs. When we want to time it, we believe that the timing has to be between 2021 and 22, and that's what we are timing it.
Great point, excellent point. In fact, you spoke about women, and I was reminded of 3 products for women: the vacuum cleaner, the fridge, and the washing machine. The first vacuum cleaner which came into the market was 80 pounds, and it was the cost was nearly 1/3 of a car. And it was, of course, not that successful, but it paved the way for the future vacuum cleaners to come. And it made the road for this great invention for women. The second was the washing machine. In the beginning, the washing machine used to have a problem. The first washing machine had a lot of problem that the women's hair used to get caught in the machine, because that time the only access which electricity had was through the bulb socket. Because bulb had come before that. There were no plugs and no sockets like that. So you had to take off the bulb and then hook the washing machine wire into that, and which used to suddenly make the washing machine come on, and there was no on-off switches because people had not thought of that. So, but washing machines really reduced eventually the drudgery of the woman, and similarly the fridge. In the beginning, the fridges used to explode. But look at how much the first fridges which came and made the road, how much they have saved in overall food for the globe. It is unimaginable. Great point. Coming to Amit. Amit, the question to you is on L3. Where do you see the L3 future coming, and what is your advice to startups who are on the cusp of this sector, who might have just be coming with some product, and they might not have even got the funding, and now how will that situation play out? Because you are a startup expert, I would like to have your comment, Amit.
Sure. So, Pavan, just for my clarification, the question is electric future. Is that correct?
Electric future, mainly this future of startups who have not made it, who have already the tarmac they were preparing, and suddenly the COVID crisis came. Not like you, that you were almost already off and you're taken off. Yeah, go ahead.
We actually had to take off for the records. It's a long journey. But not only, I think EV startups across all segments, they will have challenges in raising capital. So I don't have a good answer or a solution for that. Having said that, if at least all of the panelists believe that the future of electric mobility looks better and promising, and as long as you have a product which solves a real problem of a consumer or bring efficiency for a business using electric mobility, I think you have something interesting in your hand. Right now, my only suggestion is just to go for survival. As long as you are able to survive yourself for next 6 months, you will have a chance to prove your product worthiness. Otherwise, this discussion has no meaning. So at least from Yulu's perspective, we are also equally impacted. As you can imagine, our revenues are zero, but we do have a cost base, which includes our salaries of employee. Unlike many other Western counterparts, we decided to have even the on-ground ops team also on our roles. So the blue collar people, typically people, just rely on a gig worker, but we were not happy with that format. We were not happy with the quality of the service. So we decided to hire them on our roles. In times like right now, it is actually kind of a financial drag. Good part is we raise capital sometime in November. So we are okay. And we think this is our responsibility to stay with them and not impact their livelihood. So as a company, we have taken that decision. But it's coming at a cost of we impacting our cash flow in the bank, and we certainly do not have infinite money. And we believe, as I said earlier, because of the macro environment around public mobility and the goodness we are able to provide to a consumer, we will see a faster recovery. So, at least from our perspective, we are hoping that in a month or two, we will see the business buzzing back, and we doubling down on electric mobility and some more goodness coming our way, will be able to build a large business. So don't lose your hope. Stay on the crease. It's kind of a test match environment. Don't play T20. You need to be on the crease, and hopefully good things will happen.
They are also wanting to know if you will stay on the crease or you're going to sell Yulu bikes.
So I would request every one of your wishes. Hopefully, at least the money in the bank says that we'll stay on the crease. Hopefully, not do anything stupid. As far as we selling Yulu bike on our own, I think that situation will not happen. Because we are not OEM, I'll rather work with a company who is manufacturing it and put those vehicles on our platform and then give it on rental basis. So right now our rental model is literally by minutes. People are using them for 20 minutes to 30 minutes on an average, and then the same vehicle is being used by someone else. What we can do as a product extension, we can give our product for a day, week, or a month. That is still a possibility, although we are not very happy about that outcome either, because you're still holding the vehicle and you're not able to realize the full potential, the economic potential which that vehicle can give it to you when you're selling on a minute basis. But we will not sell because we don't think that we have a value addition in that process.
So several questions are coming for you all by name. So Naveen, why has Harley Davidson pulled back its EV model? Question number one. Question number two, if EV will become, or what part of the EV supply chain can we occupy? And I think this is for both you and Mahesh. And then for Mahesh, EVs in aerospace. What is your view on that? Naveen.
See, when you look at mobility, and I'm talking more about two-wheelers here than anything else, there is a certain performance of the vehicle till which time as the vehicle actually makes sense in terms of the cost of ownership. So the initial purchase price and the cost of running. The minute you go beyond that, it becomes a lifestyle product. Now, Harley is purely in the lifestyle space. It's not a commuter segment bike at all. But the expectations that a customer has, so if you've got a Harley Davidson, let's say you've got a Fat Boy, and you've got an electric vehicle next to it, and the Fat Boy costs you a certain amount, you can be pretty much sure that to get that same level of performance, the other vehicle, the electric, will be about twice the price of this high performance vehicle. So when you're looking at performance as being the main criteria, in that case, if you have that torque and the power, you're not going to get the range. If you have the range, you're not going to get the torque and power. And the batteries are going to be extremely expensive to run. They're going to be very expensive to maintain, to replace once they come to the end of their life cycle. So when you look at it, even when you look at it in India, so if you look at a vehicle which is giving a high performance vehicle in the electric two-wheeler, a very high performance, the cost of running is going to be higher than that of a 100cc or 125cc IC engine vehicle. The battery replacement cost itself may cost you 45, 50, 60,000 depending on how many kilowatt hours of battery you've got there. at the end of their life cycle, which could be in 3-year time, or when they come for after post warranty. So for any product for that matter, electric two-wheelers in that high performance has not been a success anywhere in the world. And that is the way it is going to be. So we believe that electric two-wheelers, as you see elsewhere in the world, it is going to be it has certain performance at a certain range and at a certain price point. At that price point and at that band, it makes absolute sense. The minute you're going over that, you're going into a very, very lifestyle kind of a product. And there you've got numerous other options to choose from also. So even though Harley, I think, pulled out of that motorcycle that they were creating, but I think they have come out, or they've shown a prototype of an electric bicycle that they may produce going forward. So it's not that it's a experiment that they did. That experiment didn't work. They will retract. They will go back to the drawing board, create something new and come out with it. So I don't think any company at this point of time in IC is going to be able to ignore the change that is possibly going to happen in the near future or in the long run. They all have to gear up for it, no matter which company it is. That's the first one. And potential in supply chain, huge potential, huge. Now, what was happening when we started off this whole electric, and and this is a change I'm seeing in the last 3-4 years, but prior to 3-4 years, if we spoke to any credible, any large tier 1 or tier 2 OEM manufacturer, component manufacturer, our volumes were way too small for them. So it wasn't exciting enough for them to actually produce products for us. Either then the capex was too high, the initial purchase price of the tooling, etc., was too high, or if you load the amortization into it, it was again too high, because they're used to making millions of units. But this is a chicken and egg situation. Here the volumes are low and they are bound to grow. So you need to really handle it with kid gloves at this point of time. Now what's happening, so there is opportunity for new companies to come in, which are more lean, don't have the level of overheads, and are looking at smaller volume, batch volumes. Smaller batch volumes, efficient systems. And then beyond that, as I spoke about earlier, there is potential for telematics and data analyzing and data handling, etc. So that is a very huge spectrum. So there is a substantial amount of potential in the supply chain. It's not going to be that the complete IC engine supply chain is going to take over electric. There will be new vendors which come into play.
Great. So Mahesh, adding to that question is a straight question coming for you, which is, will you be offering any exchanges for an IC, an EV against an IC return? And another question is, do you see differences in regional demand patterns in India for EVs? Mahesh.
Yeah, thanks, Pavan. So I'll answer one by one. So the first one is on the supply chain. So my view is the supply chain of EV is just getting built around the world. People today talk about China being a dominant player. Is actually not true, because at this point of time, they are a dominant player because they have the 50% of the global market. So anybody who has a market will have a dominant player in supply chain as well. Now, having said that, if you look at what we are doing, for example, let's look at Mahindra Trio, the three-wheeler. Except the cell, the battery cell, which is not today manufactured in India, everything else is localized. We have a motor made in our plant, we have the power electronics, and we have the battery pack done in our plant. So we have developed it in a platform called MESMA 48. So the same components, actually, we are going to export to Europe. We have tied up with a company who wants powertrain of 48 volt, which we are going to supply. Now, similarly, we are setting up a Chakan plant where we are building up the 350 volt system, which I said, from there, the powertrain is going to go to Korea. So we are going to supply to Korea the powertrain from Make in India. So we strongly believe that the global supply chain of EV is still getting built, and India has time to build up that ecosystem. And it's just a start. We hardly have any few vehicles right now, and we are preparing ourselves for 2025 and 2030, which is going to be a bigger game. For that, we need basic technology. We need IPRs developed in India, and then it's a manufacturing based setup in India. So while having said that, still there are many electronic components. It's not only for EV, but also for the electronics industry to reflect and see that many electronic components are still not basically like your resistors, capacitors, IGBTs, and most of them are not made in India. So, but it's fine. You are not going to play every part of the value chain into the country, but you can always have certain portion value add and supply to the globe. I think we'll have to look at that in the supply chain perspective, and that's what Mahindra is taking a role in it. The second one was about air taxis. Pavan, you said that, and then before this, I think there are a lot of requests and collaboration efforts coming up in air taxis, particularly in city transport and drones and so on and so forth. So electric will play a vital role there, because it will be more easy and I would say technologically advanced with electronics and automation, autonomous to handle such things. There are requests coming in, and I see that there is a potential, but we have to go a long way in that. The third one, Pavan, you are talking about regional requests. Yes, I would say there are specific regional requests. For example, if you look at Bangalore is very prone for four-wheeler market, electric market. So most of our, I would say 50% of our sale of electric four-wheelers are around Bangalore and Pune, I would say, between the two cities. Most of the IT professionals who are either who want to do something to the society, or people who are very, very concerned about environment, are buying around this. So the four-wheeler, our cluster is around Bangalore, Pune, and Delhi, around these three in that sequence. But if you look at three-wheeler, you will be surprised. The highest auto we sold is in Kerala, because in fact, Kerala, 3 or 4 cities, they said that they would promote electric three-wheeler alone. The autos, the major concentration is in Kerala. E-rickshaws, electric rickshaws, I think they are in north and northeast cities like Raipur. While many of the learned people are thinking that electric mobility is going to be the city-based or urban-based development, I think we will prove it wrong, because most of the three-wheelers, electric three-wheelers, both the autos and e-rickshaws, the revolution is happening in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Most of the sales are happening in these cities because they embrace technology faster, which is because they can really understand the earning potential much faster than which is in cities. So this is our analysis of the market on segmentation between four-wheelers and three-wheelers.
Great points. So coming to 2 questions each, to Atul and then to Amit. I will come back to you with you both with the last question. So Atul, one gentleman wants to know sodium-ion batteries. What is your point of view on the prospect for sodium-ion batteries? And do you think battery management systems may evolve in India, and companies which are in this battery management system space would be coming in? Atul.
Oh yeah. No, I think as far as the new kind of chemistries are concerned, there are quite a few being discussed and experimented at this point of time. I think Mahesh had also touched on this in the beginning when you asked about lithium and the ability to mine more lithium. For sure, lithium ion at the moment is one of the most commercially viable, with the best kind of most advanced supply chain around it. But it doesn't mean that new chemistries, the new batteries will not come. But here is a word of caution. Coming out with a new chemistry and then being able to deploy in the field has a long duration in between. In some sense, it's like a drug discovery in the pharma industry. So you identify a molecule, then experiment. So in this case also, you identify a chemistry, you experiment it, you try and get what your desired characteristics are in the laboratory. Then you figure out a way to package it in the form of a cell, and then you test it again. there are multiple levels of testings which happen, and obviously you need to also ensure that you don't take too long a time, but at the same time it takes time. And then once you are done with that, it is also to set up a manufacturing process, and setting up that commercially viable manufacturing facility also takes a lot of time and capital both, and that's where I think it takes long time. So whether it is sodium ion, whether it is aluminum air, zinc air, solid state, there are plenty of them, and then there are variations of lithium ion as well. I think personally, with my limited knowledge, again, I'm not an expert. With my limited knowledge, uh, plenty of these things are happening today. Will they become commercially viable at the scale the way lithium ion today is? Maybe some of them. Uh, when will they become commercially viable and available on the table, off the shelf, the way it is? Perhaps 7 or 8 years from now. It would be give and take a couple of years on either side. So potentially we are talking of definitely beyond 2025. It's closer to 27, 28, or 2030. Um, which one do I feel has the best chance? I believe solid state has the best chance as of today, as one of the potential, let's say, counter to lithium ion being available in the market. It will give a lot of advantages over the current technology in terms of number of cycles, in terms of energy density, in terms of thermal stability, all put together. So this is pretty much on the ability or the relative positioning of variety of chemistries and how far they are from here. And you had another question. I'm sorry, I missed that question, Pavan.
That was battery management system companies.
Yeah.
Do you think a future exists for them in India?
Oh yes, I think it's a big time future. So as of now, current situation is that the OEMs, which are making their own battery packs to a large extent, so Mahesh and company and then others have their own designs to a large extent, which are customized battery packs with the battery management systems designed to their desire and to the technical specifications. Whereas many of the other companies who buy vehicles from others, for example, companies like Amit, and then many other companies as well, who engage third-party battery pack manufacturers, they typically rely on standard BMSs which are available off the shelf, most of them from China, and put together quickly a battery pack, and they try to customize a little bit, but really they are standard BMSs which are not essentially designed for the application, not essentially designed for Indian conditions. So I think this is a very large opportunity, not just for our own consumption, but also we could probably look at as an export as an opportunity, because this is something where we don't have any such limitation that we don't have lithium, we don't have lithium ion, other components like cobalt, etc., etc. We don't have facilities to manufacture cells. We have a large amount of electronics manufacturing facilities in this country, right? So BMS is an electronic component, and then of course on top of it, BMS also has a software riding on it, right? And we as a nation are pretty good at that. We are pretty nicely positioned as far as software development is concerned. So I guess this is a large potential opportunity. Some of startups have already started working in this space. I believe more and more can jump into it. It's an opportunity which is on the table.
Okay, so Amit, are you planning to go global? But more importantly, another question is coming back at you again and again. What are the survival tips for startups in this sector who have not been so fortunate as you to get their funding in November 2019?
Sure. So our plan for global, good question. The way I understand our business model, I think every country has very local flavor to micromobility. We do have plans to go global, but not alone. we will do it with some partner where they have the necessary backbone of relationships and most importantly, deep desire to fix their mobility. And if we are able to find one, then we are happy giving our technology, our operational know-how, and last but not the least, the vehicles we have been designing with the help of OEM partners. So this is how we will be going global. I don't think this will happen this year. Most likely towards next year, we will figure out something on this front. As far as trips are concerned, there's unfortunately no one silver bullet. At least in our case, when we were hit with zero revenue situation, we actually had to go through each and every line item of our cost, from salaries to office rentals to various things we have been using. So in our case, if I look at our indirect cost, uh, half of them were basically employee cost, the salary, as we say. Luckily, in our case, we actually were very frugal in our economics. So we were not losing money operationally. So we were one of the very rare companies across the globe on micromobility side where we are operationally profitable from day one as far as the electric mobility is concerned. And that's why, personally, I'm so bullish about electric mobility because it gives you that luxury of being positive economics versus anything else. But coming to the cost item, which is indirect generally, so we had to cut salaries. So we decided not to touch people below 5 lakh salary. And then with different grades, we started cutting salary at 10%, 20%, etc. So maximum at an employee level, we took 30% salary cut for senior people, and founders took the maximum around 75% salary hit. With that, we were able to save money. Then we negotiated with our office landlords. We have a lot of warehouses, workshops. So on an average, we were able to knock off 35 to 40% in rentals. And then we went to insurance companies, went to Vodafone, everything which was more than 1 lakh rupees in monthly outgo, which is a small number as you can imagine. We basically went and negotiated uh, for a better term. Uh, so this is how we did our thing. I don't think this, as I said, this template can be applied to every scenario, but clearly you having runway is very important because even if you, let's say, going for a fundraising, all of your negotiations will be a function of money in the bank. So how much sustainable power, sustenance power you have. So make sure that if you have to take difficult decision, take it right now, so that you have negotiation power when you basically going ahead for fundraising wherever the market is reviving. So that's how I would look at it.
Very good, very good. I think you have said that cost cutting is one important angle. Seeking concessions from the Vodafones of the world or companies which are doing well today is another. And most importantly, what you said earlier was that stamina. So you are saying that there may be no silver bullet, but there is a stamina tablet which is required to remain on the crease. So coming to my last question, both from Mahesh and Naveen, given the fact that many companies are relocating their manufacturing from China, are you looking at tying up some such companies and trying to bring them to India? Mahesh and then Naveen.
See, partnerships are part of life in auto industry. So if you look at Mahindra and Ford, we had a partnership, collaboration. It can be at multiple levels. So there are a lot of discussion happening around how do we collaborate with like-minded or like industry experts. So not necessarily it has to be a JV. It can be even some collaboration between all of them. We are using batteries. We are talking with battery companies are today making vehicles, and vehicle companies are talking about making batteries. I think EVs are a very thin space. Right now, I believe collaboration is the most important thing. And we are open. We are open to any partners in any value addition, but we'll have to go by the merit. I think there is no emotional element in collaboration. I think it is important that we'll have to go by the merit of value add between the two partners. What we have a knowledge of India about 220 million kilometers of electric mobility technology we have versus what we want to do with the partners. But there is no reason to say that we will not look at it. We will have to look at every single partnership at any part of the world to see how we can get best to our customers, which will add value to the business.
And Naveen.
I agree with broadly with what Mahesh is saying. We are completely open to collaborations and partnerships, and I think this is going to be a collaborative model. That said, there are already a number of discussions that we are already having at this point of time. Now, this doesn't again necessarily mean that it's going to be a joint venture scenario or that we're going to be manufacturing, but it could also be tapping into our supply chain in China, introducing it to vendors in India, and getting them to collaborate or partner with each other, where we have no role to play more than just the introduction part of it. So we are very clear that we're not going to be a very deep down manufacturing company. We are going to remain as more of an assembly company and will rely on other companies to provide us the components that we require. So we want to keep our capex in the manufacturing as low as we possibly can, and at the same time work with multiple vendors in providing us the right components at the right price and the right quality that we require. So we are doing a number of these introductions. We are getting companies to collaborate with each other. We're getting companies to come and set base close to our factories or create a hub around us. So we're already working on those options. And like I said, we are completely open. So we totally understand collaborative is the answer to go forward. It's not that you work in isolation.
No, great point. Very clear vision. And I hope that it is supplemented at the policy level as well as the geopolitical level, where we understand that we will not be able to build barriers to the entire supply chain coming from all across the world. Some countries, as we said, will flock together. Great. So though there were more questions and I did my best to accommodate it in the buckets which I had, but I ran out of buckets and we are running out of time. It was a great discussion. I think what has been said is that though mobility will go down, or maybe the desire to be mobile may reduce, or intensity of commuting could reduce, but EVs will not be affected by this decline because currently they have a very small share of the market. And EVs are the future. COVID crisis has also a reminder to us that technologies like EVs are not only mobility giving, they are also life sustaining. So on that note, thank you very much, panelists, and thank you, Siddharth. If you have any last words, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for this thought-provoking session. We've got a lot of questions, in fact, coming in even now, personal messages also. Many are taking home a lot of nuggets from this conversation. So thank you very much, panelists and sirs, for joining in. Thank you, audience, for the engaging session. We've also received many requests from companies within India and some companies in other parts of the world to look at a more collaborative approach in battling today's COVID times. And I will most certainly reach out to you to see how we can build this ecosystem further.
And one request is there, that all the questions which I could not include in those buckets, if they have not been generically answered, at least in part, kindly raise those to the speakers and get back to the questioners. That will be really very, very good.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I'll take some of their time. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
and
then, bye.
be safe. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Stay safe.